Hi, Steve here. I just thought I would get on and do a short video to explain the previous one. It was a video in Russian. I have a blog at Echo Moskvy, which has been my great source of Russian listening and reading over the last year or so. And I have a blog there, and I normally write for that blog, and it's a rather long process because my Russian is so full of holes that what I have to do is I have to write it, and it takes me a while to write it, and then I have to send it in to one of our tutors at Link to have them correct it, and then I get it back, and it doesn't necessarily come back right away. And so it takes a while before it gets up there. Everyone's very impressed with how good my Russian is, but of course that's because it's corrected by our tutors. So anyway, that's what all that is about. But while I have this video going, I might comment on a few things. There's been some discussion at one of our Link forums about how useful a tutor is. And one of our members, who's actually a teacher, sort of implied that a teacher or a tutor is superfluous. And I just want to comment on that. I am very much of a motivated self-learner. You can see that if you remember at Link. I'm one of the heavy users. I create a lot of links. I also use tutors a lot now. For speaking and also for my writing correction. But I'm an independent learner, much more independent learning, of an independent learner than most. I like having a tutor. Not so much at the beginning, again, because I know what I'm doing. I've learned 11 languages. I know how to go about it. I think a person who is less confident or less knowledgeable as a language learner should have a tutor earlier. The tutor is someone who encourages, inspires, someone that you don't want to let down, someone who can explain things occasionally. Tutors too at Link, it's pretty wonderful when I see the work that Rosanna, one of our tutors, is doing for me in Russian, and some of the same stuff is happening in other languages, Japanese, German, and so forth, Spanish, French. But Rosanna will talk for 2-3 minutes about cases and give many examples, or she'll talk about verbs of motion. In other words, she'll provide an explanation, which is an excellent explanation, and might be the kind of explanation that you would get in class, except that everyone who is a member at Link and is studying Russian can grab that explanation from the library, listen to it, read it, save words and phrases from it, listen to it over and over again. And so we're leveraging the tutor in that way. But yeah, you need people to help you out, I think. I very much appreciate getting my writing corrected. I'll sometimes record my corrected writing, which helps to reinforce it. So I think the tutor, as long as it's not, you know, then I'll digress. There was some discussion. I had a discussion with someone here in the Canadian government about the possibility of Link getting involved in some of the immigrant learning that takes place. And of course, they were quite negative on the idea, and I'll get into that later. But one of their questions was, what are the credentials of your teachers? Well, Rosanna, to take an example, she is an IT professional in Magnitogorsk in the Urals. She's phenomenal. The reports that I get from our discussions, very much in detail. She explains a bunch of stuff about the grammar, more than I need, which is fine because it's all content to me. She has no credentials as a teacher. If I have a choice between someone who's enthusiastic, pleasant, helpful, has empathy, enjoys it, versus someone who has a degree in philology, linguistics, and I don't know what. I don't need that. And I'm not saying that the person with those degrees can't be a good teacher. That person may very well be an excellent teacher. But it's more a matter of personality. I said somewhere that a good teacher has to be a performer. So the credentials are almost irrelevant. I think you'll probably find the same percentage of people who, just by their nature, can be a good teacher. You'll find them in every walk of life, not necessarily just amongst people who have taken a course in teaching. So yeah, I think a tutor, a friend, a coach, an advisor, a guide, you know, a sounding board, that kind of role is important. So that's on the issue that we discussed on our forum at Link. Another issue that is a part of the discussion I had with the Canadian government was that their program for immigrants is based on a thing called the Canadian Language Benchmarks, and there is a Wikipedia entry for that, and I looked it up, and the Canadian Language Benchmarks is in turn based on a thing called task-based language learning, which also has a Wikipedia entry. And as I understand it, task-based language learning means having people do tasks in class. Let's pretend that we are going to the bank. Let's pretend that you know, you're going through customs or whatever it might be. And supposedly this gets people to use the language, and that's very good. Now, that may be very good. I happen to believe in a lot of input initially with a minimum amount of output in the initial stages as you accumulate your words and phrases and familiarity with everything that happens in the language. But there are people who like output. That's fine. The problem I have with that is that the Canadian government will only support language programs for immigrants based on Canadian language benchmarks, based on so-called task-based language learning. In other words, based on a system which only works in a classroom. So those people who don't like to learn that way, those teachers who don't like to teach that way, they're out of luck. Everybody has to learn the one way. I find that astounding. I have never suggested that everybody should use LINC and only use LINC. I have suggested that LINC is a useful way to learn. I think it is a more natural way to learn, not just LINC, but input-based learning is less stressful, more cost-effective. It puts the onus on the learner where it should be. It gives the learner a lot of freedom of choice and learn and use dead time during the day and so forth and so on. But to suggest that all public funds available for language learning should be applied to one system only, that people don't have the choice to learn some other way and be supported by the government, is nothing short of astounding. It's like, what happened to choice? Anyway. So, but this was just a quickie here just to comment on why you had that Russian video that preceded this one. And thank you for listening. Bye for now.